Hi, and welcome to Street Smart Safety for Women, the Bearing Witness series. Bearing witness means to acknowledge that something has happened. And in this series, we'll be bearing witness to survivors of domestic violence and abuse. These brave survivors have agreed to tell us their stories in the hopes that what they've learned and what they've experienced will help those who have not yet experienced or been exposed to domestic violence and abuse learn something from their experiences. And it's my hope that by bearing witness, we can assist these brave survivors in healing their trauma. Today, we have Jill is our guest. Now, Jill is, first of all, a registered nurse who also has a master's in nursing. And Jill is also a survivor of domestic violence. And that's what we're going to talk to her about today. Hi, Jill. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Laura. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you asked me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story? As much of it, as little as you want to share with people?
Okay, well, the my story part is a little bit shorter than some of the other parts, but um, when I think about myself, I always thought of myself as being strong, independent, sure of myself, outgoing, a fun-loving party girl, self-assured to never tolerate being put down, demeaned, or denigrated in any way. I had more guy friends than I had girlfriends because I didn't like the drama. I knew my husband in high school, but we had no real attraction at that time. We ended up getting together in a whirlwind fashion, and everything moved really, really fast. Everything was fine and dandy. And if you want to ask about how fast it worked out, well, we ended up getting married within 3 months.
Mm.
So when I think about those 3 months, I want to say he wanted to spend like every moment with me and everything. I was working, he didn't really have to. So he really wasn't going out there and doing anything. So I found it hard because my job basically was like part-time at the time, but he wanted to just kind of like have me all the time. And I kind of was flattered at that. So um, then then after we actually he actually moved in with me, let's put it that way. So after he moved in with me, he started telling me I had to change how I was dressing.
Hmm.
Considering that was the fact that that's what attracted him to me in the first place. So he didn't want me to wear those things in public nor around my friends or whatever. So I toned it down a little bit.
So would you say that the thing that he thought that made you look hot initially, he didn't want you to wear the hotness anymore?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. We were talking about red flags. That should have been one,
Mm.
because that's what attracted him to me.
Hmm.
So, you don't think anything about it. You just say, okay, so we'll deal with it and we'll move on from that.
And you want to make him happy. So if he just wants you to dress a little different, what's the big deal?
Right, right. It was no big, it wasn't a big deal to me. But like I said, if we were just hanging out with my friends, it was a little bit awkward because I wasn't really being myself, so
Mm.
to speak. So, and the funny thing is, we had similar friends. Um, but then I introduced him to my friends, and we all used to hang out and everything. And then he kind of didn't want me to hang out with my friends so much. And
Mm.
again, he wanted to spend more time with me. So, so I was like, okay, so we're a couple, they're single and this and that. But you have to remember, most of my friends were guy friends.
Mm.
So therefore, that created a little bit of an issue at the time, no big deal. So, okay, so after 3 months, we got married. And about 2 to 3 weeks later, I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter.
Mm.
And everything seemed good. And I was cocooning because I just kind of figured that it was part of the natural process of the hormones and the changing of the body. And, okay. So that went along. About 7 or 8 months being pregnant, I was doing my little wifey thing. I was making dinner and waiting for him to come home from work because now he actually had a job. And so I had dinner ready and he didn't show up until 3 hours later. Now
Mm.
you have to remember, we also didn't have cell phones back then.
Right.
But wherever you were, there was a phone, let's put it that way. So I questioned him why he didn't come home for dinner and where he actually was, that he couldn't call me. Um,
Well, you were worried about him.
I was worried about him, and it was the expected time for him to be home and having dinner and blah, 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 blah. So I got upset that he wouldn't answer me. And he got mad at me,
Mm.
saying that, how dare you question me?
Was that the first time that he said, "How dare you question me," or it was just?
Yeah, no, that was the first time he actually said that to me.
Mm.
So we got into screaming back and forth because I was upset and he was yelling at me and this and that, and the more he refused to answer me, the angrier I got. So when I'm angry, I yell, and I yell pretty damn good. So in order to stop me from yelling, he held on to me and covered my mouth and my nose. And I bit him. Well, then he hit me. Mind you,
Oh,
I was pregnant with his child. Okay.
really
So,
super pregnant, pregnant.
yeah, I 7, 8 months, I would say super pregnant. So it ended up getting so scary that I was living in an apartment complex, and it got so scary, not necessarily, well, yes, for me, but not necessarily so, but our neighbors called the cops and cops came.
Mm.
Yeah, it was interesting, and obviously there are quite a number of things that stand out in retrospect. As I said, you know, um,
So would you say that night was the turning point,
um,
or one of the?
I should say that it was an eye opener. I can't say it was the turning point. Um, um, it what it should have been at that particular moment because of how I viewed myself prior to getting with him. Always saying that I was strong and I wouldn't tolerate anything like that. That would be the end of it. It should have been. It
Mm.
wasn't. It wasn't.
Mm.
The eyes were not open yet.
Mm. So you did not quite yet feel that he had betrayed you, that your relationship had been betrayed.
It it made me question it, but now that we're talking about the betrayal and the change, I want to call it the wow factor. Yeah, it should have been.
Mm.
Actually, what I want to say is I actually have to admit, looking back at everything, that I don't think I was per se in love.
Mm.
I think I was more infatuated with the fact that somebody wanted to be with me for the good, the bad, the ugly.
Mm.
And with everything. And then moving forward, I say, yeah, the betrayal, and I actually have this here. It should have been an eye opener, and I should have paid attention and recognized he was showing his true self.
Would you,
Hindsight.
hindsight is always 2020. And I also want to point out too, so this was 25 years ago, 30 years ago.
Let's see. My daughter is 36.
Oh,
So almost 37 years ago, 36 years ago, 37 years ago.
so to put it in context, keep in mind, and you and I have talked about this before, that domestic violence really at that time was considered a family matter. So
Yes.
the situation with your husband and you and the cops and all of that wasn't unusual, because it
Right.
really wasn't until Nicole Brown Simpson,
Right.
O.J.
Right.
Simpson, that domestic violence started to rise to consciousness, at least just even a little bit, because up until then, everything went on behind closed doors.
Right. Yeah, Nicole Simpson actually is the major thing that brought it to the public.
Mhm.
Whereas, like you said, nobody ever thought twice about it. It
Mhm.
was a family matter. And like I said, when the cops came, they just claimed that it was a family tiff
Mhm.
because no damage was done.
Mhm.
And again, with that side note that I gave you there also.
Right.
So,
So when you say that your ex-husband showed his true colors,
mhm.
that was that the first time that you saw his true colors? Would you say that he had on a very nice exterior?
Yes, and I'm going to use your words against you on this one. Yes, it was the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I had heard things before we had gotten married, that he had a temper and this and that. And, it didn't faze me because obviously I have a hot temper too. So,
Mm.
so it didn't faze me because it wasn't me in that predicament.
Right.
So shoo shoo,
Right.
I don't need to hear that. And he treated me very well, I have to say. And that was huge when that happened, because it was such a different person, you know. And like I said, I should have had my eyes open, and you know what? You don't. You don't.
Yeah. And especially, again, to put it in context, especially you didn't then,
Right.
because times were different. But
Right.
to put it in context in another way, although times are different, people are
Mhm.
still the same.
Yep.
People are still the same. We
Right.
fall in love, we find somebody charming, and we say, oh my gosh, they love me for who I am. Like you
Yeah.
said, good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and I was I was brought up. I mean, I never really saw anything. I heard the fights and this and that, but my parents, they worked together, they lived together, they vacationed together. But I always saw them make it work.
Mm.
So I grew up thinking you could make it work. So no matter what was happening, you make it work. You do what you need to do.
You find a way.
Yeah, yeah. So over the years, and yeah, I'm leaving out a lot of parts, and some things will come back, you know, coming up here. But we had arguments and fights, but nothing physical. Everything was verbal. And like I said, I had a hot temper too. So when he really got into insulting me and putting me down, giving me snide remarks and all this stuff, I can name at least 2 times where I was so furious that whatever was in my hand went flying at him full force.
Mm.
I can't say I connected, but whatever it was, even if he was down the hallway, it went flying right at him. So, I
Mm.
mean, but that's, like I said, at that time, I was strong.
Mm.
I was very strong-willed, and, you know, I wasn't going to tolerate.
Right.
So, so that kind of leads into, all of that other wonderful stuff.